Hi, this is Todd's Broken. So I've had this YouTube channel for probably about a year, but I've not really done anything with it. If you have a look, there's just the occasional Twitch stream that I've done in the past on there, just a kind of place to host it. So I've been thinking recently, and I've been wanting to do this idea for a while. So what I'm planning to do is to go through the entirety of my last album called You Are Not Alone, which came out on Viper just over a year ago now, and literally go through every track one at a time and give kind of like an in-depth production walkthrough of each track. It's quite interesting because writing an album is very differently to writing just an EP or just one-off tunes, especially when you're in that album kind of mindset. You obviously, each track needs to stand alone by itself, but you need to think how it will interact with others. So a large majority of the writing process is actually going back and forth, tweaking a bit on that track and going to another one. Especially when it comes to me, when I write albums like I did with my first album, Section 9, and this one, is that I've always been a fan of those albums that are gapless, so the tracks will blend into one another. So it's basically, instead of 13 individual tracks, it's 1 hour, one and a bit hours of one continuous piece of audio without any pauses in it. And this is something I want to achieve here, and it's quite interesting trying to write that, especially those transitions. And you always, when you're having to write, keep in mind where this is going to go on the album in terms of the track listing. You're not making a batch of tunes, then cutting them down and working out, okay, this will be track 1, this will be track 2. Once everything's completed, it's kind of from the beginning, I would have basically a plan in my head and the track names a lot of the time as well. A lot of the time track names are enough to get me going. And yeah, so yeah, they all need to work together, and you're thinking, how do I put this? You're thinking about what place it serves in the album, and you're thinking, okay, this is definitely going to be an intro track, this could be an outro track. This one will work well going into this one, so how can the previous track finish that will complement the start of the next one, and vice versa? How will the start of this track, how would that complement the previous track? So yeah, like I said, I'll go through each track one at a time and upload them kind of in sequence. Maybe once a week. That would be a good idea to maybe do. These intros will get a lot better as I get along. And if you hear any squeaks, it's my chair. It's a really squeaky chair. I will warn you that I made this on a previous computer, and I did do the Ableton Collect All and Save, but there are the odd bits where there might be audio files missing, so I might just need to skip those parts. Places where I flatten stuff down to audio, I'm one for flattening something to audio and overwriting the original MIDI or audio and processing. Especially the last PC I had was terrible, and yeah, I needed to constantly flatten things down. Now my computer it's an absolute beast. I got it just after I finished the album, and yeah, so it all runs a lot better. But it's just, this is obviously looking retrospectively. This album's very important. Obviously, it was released on Viper Recordings. It was a massive album. It was a massive big deal for me. I always wanted to be on that label and release an album. Just even getting a release on there was just mind blowing. But an album is just another level. It's literally kind of like a dream come true kind of moment. And yeah, so this is why I wanted to show this album. In terms of like writing, I discovered a lot of things in here. Especially, definitely my most cohesive piece of work. So incredibly proud. One of my biggest achievements personally to get this completed, and my whole kind of writing evolved throughout this album. And a lot of things I do now is because of things I've picked up writing this album. And so yeah, so what I'm going to do. So this is the first. I'm not going to say first track. This is the first project, not chronologically as in time, but in track listing. If you have a look here, this one project actually contains "You Are Alone," which is the intro track, and "I Am," which is the first which is track 2, but the first kind of proper track on the album, and they are in the same project. This is the project in all 144 channels in all its glory. The reason I did this was, and I also did this later on, there was an interlude track that later got incorporated into the outro of one of the tracks later on, and I'll mention that again in the future when we get down to that track. But yeah, this was definitely one that I definitely wanted to be absolutely as cohesive as possible. So, and there are elements that overlap between the two tracks, things that appear. So you can have a look here. I've used like a lot of these samples here are used in I Am as well, and obviously I want the mix downs to be exactly the same. Because if I did this in a separate project, no matter how good I would have matched it, it would have been slightly off. So yeah, that's why I incorporated it into this project. So originally, the intro was very different to how it was. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk. So this will probably be the shortest episode, just purely because I Am. You Are Alone, sorry, is the shortest track on the album, being the intro. So it's this section, all this stuff here. It looks a bit sparse, but obviously remember that a lot of these blank channels are for channels in I Am. I Am definitely came about first as a track, and then this came afterwards. There was a totally different intro track as well, which is this here. So I'll just actually quickly play you that. The reason why I wanted it just felt a bit wishy-washy and a bit obvious and predictable. Listening back, like I just listened to this before I recorded it, and it does sound really cool. So it could be like something I could look at for maybe like an intro to my sets or something like that. But yeah, let me play it to you.
Awaken. It has been a long time since you last opened your eyes. You once said that when blind, you could see once again. But go on. Open your eyes.
So you can hear it's similar.
Now look at it.
So a lot of the core ideas
Feel it.
for the intro now are
You feel it, don't you?
from this original version.
Why should I help you? You tried to change what is not yours to change. Now, you must undo what you have become. You are alone. You are alone. You are alone. You are alone.
When I close my eyes, I feel nothing. Once I feel well.
So that was the old intro track. It was more like, obviously it's not mixed down very well. It looks like a big old sausage. It sounded like it was clipping at points, but it's kind of, this was at this stage, it was kind of just throwing the ideas together. And yeah, it's more like a sketch. But as you can tell, a lot of the core kind of sounds like those big trumpet impacts. They're still in this intro and in I Am. The vocals, what is being said, the dialogue, is pretty much still the same, apart from it's done by a different voice. So it was used by I tried out lots of different text-to-speech programs and stuff, and that were online that would let you like download them as MP3, or I would download programs, or I would even just find all sorts, find apps on my phone and whatnot and record them in. I can't remember for the life of me what one I settled on. It was, like I said, it was on an old computer, but there's plenty of them out there. and it's all just to taste. I think this one just sounded a bit too like Microsoft Sam. What you might notice here is, but what I did do actually is I still kept the glitch sound. So yeah, my first album, Section 9, started off with the exact same sound and finished with pretty much the same sound as well. So the actual 2 albums, in theory, would work, would be basically very coherent, and they would be gapless within themselves. So this was the intro track to my first album. It was called Initiate. Same static sound, and there's even the same kind of when I close my eyes line.
When I close my eyes, I feel nothing. But once blind from the world, I can see once again.
And then the closing track, Absolution. Finish with the same kind of sound as well. Yes, same static sound. Cool. So yeah, I definitely wanted that to be a thing, and whenever the time comes to do my third album, on whatever label, maybe my own label, Yana, which I've got now, which is obviously, you might tell, named after this album, Yana, and You Are Not Alone Music. And yeah, we'll probably more than likely start with the same kind of sine tone that this whole album finishes on. But yeah, I've got this sound. It's the same static sound. I think I actually originally, because obviously this was done a different project here, and I tried to open it, but look, I didn't collect all and save this one because it was just a sketch, and the whole thing is just missing audio. There's like one channel that plays, which is a MIDI violin. But yeah, I literally just grabbed the MP3 and then just kept the static sound, and then just put in a few extra little bits, like pressing buttons at the end or something, I don't know, just to make it different. And then there's some of the same static sounds from the same, well, I think these are actually stems rendered from Initiate that I've just cut up. Yeah, so like my first album was very cyberpunk sounding. This is probably like the most cyberpunk album tracks, this one, and I Am on the record, but I wanted to move away from that, do more earthly kind of ethereal kind of sound, and this kind of bridged them over. But yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to change was because I was listening to like a lot of like John Hopkins and like Patrice Baumel and Max Cooper, a lot of kind of techno-y guys, and like experimental and like electronica stuff. And I just liked how arpeggio sounded at like lower temperatures, lowest tempos, and yeah, like quite an analogy feel. And I just liked the pace it had. I didn't want it, so I felt, well, maybe I'll start at 1-2-5, and wrote this arpeggio. It basically just runs through the track. I think there's tons of automation, so I made this in MS-20. Yeah, there's filter cut-offs, resonance peaks playing. MS-20 is great for like resonances. High pass. It's like even changing the envelopes as well. And then it all kind of swells with this kind of big, like reverby kind of stuff. At the end, and just get swamped out with like delays and the sort being sent off to sends. So the patch itself, I think, is a fairly simple one. I think it is based off a preset, but as you can see, there's not really. I don't understand how this works. I've tried the routing, but so I kind of keep it basic as possible. But so yeah, unfortunately, JBridge is annoying with these. Opens up a separate window. But yeah, it's basically just what is it? Just a saw and a pulse with some unison, which I don't think you can actually do on the original MS-20, the actual hardware MS-20. Which because it's monophonic, and yeah, and then it's just got. I just loved it how the filters sound in the MS-20, and then some enveloping. It's very basic kind of sound. I want to keep it as basic as possible. Yeah, boosted the stereo. So if I play it, got some reverb, but that's for later on. For when everything swells out. Overdrive, what's that doing? Yeah, it's basic. It's just a very simple thing going all the way through, and it's just playing with all these envelopes and cut-offs. And yeah, putting this, like I like putting overdrive on, especially after the reverb. I've got a vintage warmer. What's this doing? It's just doing, a heavy driven these semi-driven, heavy driven, and the light driven tapes are great. Just for putting stuff, like warming stuff up and giving them a little bit of grit, a little bit of bite. I always put the semi-driven tape as a standard on my bass buses for the mid-ranges. It just helps glue everything together, makes everything sound a bit more aggressive. We've got a limiter in here, which is squashing it. As you can see here, it's actually getting quieter because I needed. Without it, yeah, you can hear how quiet it is and how loud it is later on. So basically, I slammed it into a limiter and then decreased the level, the gain of how much is going in by, as everything else, like the effects and everything, and the filters open up, intensify to kind of counteract that. Yeah, that's basically that. Underneath, I've got a sub. So this is just an arpeggio at the minute. It's the tracks in G sharp minor, so it's doing G sharp D, which is the fifth, the seventh, minor seventh, and then back to the first. So yeah, it's just doing like a minor seventh chord, but without the third, without the B. But it's not. It doesn't really have any context, so you can send it a lot of ways. And I like doing this, where you might just a few times in this where I might just have one note going, or just a couple of notes going, but they don't really have a kind of a chord attached to them. Then you put the bass notes underneath moving around, and then that kind of gives it its context, like here. So you'll hear what effect it has, because like the root is G sharp here, so when that G sharp comes through, it's not really going to change the context of it because it's already got a G sharp in there. But once it drops down to that D sharp, then to the B and the C sharp, then it kind of nests it and gives it a lot more kind of feel to it, and the feel of the arpeggio changes as the bass note changes around it. Then it goes back to the G sharp. So, way this album kind of got its identity was kind of from the first few tracks that I wrote. The first track that I wrote and was like, yeah, this is kind of like the album. I'm writing for the album now, was Weigh Me Under, which is the penultimate track, if you don't include What You Do With What You Have, because that's a digital bonus, which was originally going to be on the album, but because of the CDs and we got like these special limited edition kind of CD things, and we couldn't get 70 minutes. I think it was like something like 64 minutes we could put on there, because they're like vinyl style. So I had to actually cut What You Do With What You Did With What You Have, which was actually going to be track 2. But once I found out, I had to go back and kind of rework the outro of this track. But anyway, Way Me Under was the first track that I wrote, and these are the chords for Way Me Under. And these kind of chords appear several times throughout the album, so it's kind of like a recurring theme in kind of different inversions of it, but they're still fundamentally G sharp minor, D sharp minor, B major, C sharp major. Or no, it would be C sharp minor. Yes, because of the E. And then we've got this as well. So I did this a lot on the album. These pads, they were actually made from a snippet of Jodie's vocal from Way Me Under, and you'll see here outside Vox Verb stretch is what it's called, is from an image from the outside. So what I'll show you, so I use a program called Pull Stretch. That's, a lot of you must know it by now, but it basically just extremely stretches something. So if I basically kind of if I find Jodie's vote, so I've got, Way Me, is it Way Me Down? Is it this one? No, I haven't. Where is it? Oh, there you go, Jodie Way. Yes, so this is the original. Sounds a bit weird playing it back because that's how the algorithms are working. It's trying to stretch it when it's not being stretched. But that's her vocal going Way Me Under from it. I think it's one of the backing vocals. But if you stretch it, you can see the actual length. So it was originally 4 seconds long. I could stretch it to 11 hours and 6 minutes, or I could do hyper stretch and make it last for 126.725 billion years. I wonder how long that'll take to render. But yeah, say we stretch it to here, and you instantly get a pad. And Pull Stretch is great just for getting little snippets of vocals or anything. I sometimes just get intros of tunes where there's melodic stuff and put it in and stretch it, and you can play around with like the EQs and compressors and stuff in here and the octave mixer, so you can add a lower fundamental. So it's got more bass. Yeah, or it's great for making drones as well, like ambient drones. What's good about this as well, because you're stretching it by a percentage, by a multiple, and even if you do it like times 8, it will not technically actually, when you put it back in Ableton, it will not actually be 8 times as long. So say 1 bar, but you wouldn't be 8 bars in when you go in. It's a bit off. But if you stretch it to random amounts, something that sounds cool, then you put it over like some chords or whatnot, and you'll come up with these kind of cool, because she's singing in key, and it's kind of creating these cool, interesting chord movements that you would have never written, and trying to kind of synthesize that with pads and the envelopes and stuff. You want to be careful with obviously stuff like breath sounds. I wouldn't suggest putting drums in here, stuff with percussion in, because they just kind of explode. But yeah, that's fundamentally what I did with Jodie's vocals here. So if I put this over the bass. So yeah, that's the pads. I've got some more here, so I think these are actually from the closing track, You Are Not Alone. Just trying to think where it might be from. If I have a look at my sample library. Yeah, you will. What you need to, what I do, because as you can see, it looks a bit old and rudimentary and a bit Windows 95. The browser isn't very great, so it takes a while to find stuff. So trying to go through sample library. So I make a folder, and then render the little snippet I want into that folder, and then but I've got that folder saved as a favorite in Pull Stretch. Where is it? So yeah, Pull Stretch. And what was the original? Giannis C# minor. Ah, so that was the guitars just swamped in reverb. So the guitars from the closing track swamped in reverb, and then it's been stretched. I've got all kinds of stuff in here. You can see just like ripping stuff from all kinds of places. And yeah, breath sounds are cool to put in, so you can get lots of cool effects. I've got an air horn. Made a cool pad and D. I think I probably pitched it before I put it in because it also introduces a lot of noise artifacts, which you can control. Then I've got this kind of pad here as well. That's also pull stretched. It's got all kinds of little pads going on. Is there any more? Some here later on, some strings. So yeah, so that's the pads. In terms of mixing them, oh, I didn't do anything with this. I must have been lazy. Or this one. I've EQ'd that one, but that one's not playing. That's actually being a track spacer send, which is going into this, but track spacer's turned off. So I must have not used that in the end. So that channel's a big waste of time. And then on this one, yeah, just cutting out the lows. Simple as that. What is good sometimes to do is maybe just scoop out the mids. So it sends it further back in the mix and allows the stuff in the middle to move. But obviously it's kind of case by case basis. Yeah, pads just boosting the highs a bit. These strings, I love these strings. This is another motif that's all the way through. I think it's just a G sharp 5 chord just playing throughout. So it's just G sharp and D sharp. So it works in lots of great contexts. Because there's no third attached to it. Third being the third note in the scale, which would be a G. Another stretch thing here, and I boosted that to boost that kind of resonant peak because it sounded good. And then the exact same strings carry on into I Am. Oh yeah, got some more here that's been pull stretch. I can't remember what. G Sharp Feed Pro. I know this is a low drone that I keep on going back to over and over again. G Sharp Feed Pro. Yeah, G Sharp Feed. Oh, so that was the original sound. Some weird kind of, I don't know where that's from. I think it's from like some weird preset off some weird synth. Then pull stretched, and I also boosted the lower harmonic to get that low rumbling to make a drone. Sounds brilliant. Yeah, it's just like an ambient machine in the box. Pull stretch. Feel a bit spoilt, really. Feels a bit cheaty, but oh well, sounds good. And you didn't know until today. So yes, in the intro with the melodic bits, so we've got some, let's have a look here. So yes, so these are like the incidental claps and stuff that come in. These are just the stock 808s for Ableton that I've got slammed into a limiter. Yeah, slammed into a limiter, especially for that big clap. They're just, what processing have I done? I think I've put like, I've overdriven the clap, which, how am I using? I'm using this one. Doesn't look like I've added anything extra these kind of processing come with. What's this one? Another clap. What have I done to it? It sounds weird. Oh, I pitched it up. That's what it is. Yeah, that's why it sounds like a clap. That one's pitched down. Open hi-hat. Yeah, just little incidental effects just to make it a bit more interesting when the arpeggio is playing. Make it sound a bit more techno. We will get to the drum and bass in the next episode. So, yes, in here we've got more little things, little incidentals. Yes, so these are some snares that I have stretched using the grain texture. Yeah, in my first album, I did a lot of kind of warping and playing around with envelopes, and these are something you can automate inside as well, and you create some crazy, like Amon Tobin style noodliness, I suppose, with those. Yeah, great for like effects. Like, it doesn't even, just sounds like white noise now, but it's cool. That one, there must be there's a little pitch thing going down. These are obviously in context with the rhythms going on. So what process have I got of that? Just a chorus. No, just a chorus. Yeah, just to widen it, to make it more like an effect than a kind of actual piece of percussion. Okay. Oh, you can see how much I've stretched that by. So that is a hi-hat. Showing browser. Not browser. Yeah, browser. So that, I think that is a hat that I stretched, and then I stretched even further to as far as I could possibly get it. Use the grain. It's like cool things you can do with that. Yep, and then here we have. So this is again in the MS-20. Look, I've flattened this. I think this is probably just some weird preset siren that I had. If you're interested, it's the Korg Legacy MS-20. I don't know if it's still available. I've had it literally ever since I've started producing music on some kind of crappy, some crappy disc, and yeah, obviously it was in 32 bits, so I've had to jaybridge it over to 64, and that's why it's a bit janky. This one is MS-20 again. So these are some kind of kicks I sound made. Very techno-y. Like 909-y kind of kicks, but so that would have been. Shut up! How do I turn off the delay? That would have been some. That would have been some white noise, as you would have heard as it opened out, with low pass filtering, but with the resonance really high up, because the resonance becomes that high, it kind of oscillates and kind of creates a tone and makes it sound like a sine wave. But then, as you see, it opens up. Annoying thing is, though, it doesn't perfectly stay on the grid as you do it. As you can see, it's kind of going out of time with the LFO that was on there. I think I used LFO because I think when I was programming it in with an envelope and the re-triggering wasn't working correctly, and I couldn't work out how to fix it, or could be bothered to work out how to fix it, so I used an LFO. But as it gets to that kind of tempo, like as it opens up into a white noise and the envelope becomes LFO becomes less prominent, it doesn't seem to matter that it's going a bit out of time. There, just a little reverse kick going in there. So I think then maybe I think I actually started off with this sample here. This is kind of a little white noise build that I made. What's on there? It's the delay's just coming from Ascend. Just a white noise that I would have opened. Then I was like, hang on, it sounds like a kick at the start. So I was like, let's turn this into a kick. And this goes with the other percussion bits. So let's show the other bits before playing them all together. Yeah, I've got another kick here that I've compressed and treated more like a kick. Yeah, it looks like a kick, sounds like a kick, so I'm going to use it as a kick, even though it's not a kick. It's made from white noise. It's just a white noise envelope. Just kind of techno-y hi-hats when the sub comes in, I believe, just to add some pace in there. And I think that might be it for the percussion. I'm a bit more organised normally with my drums like this, but let's play all these together, just the percussion parts. So, and I'll play the sub as well. And I believe the sub. Oh no, it's not. Thought it would have been side tone. Yeah, that's building up to when the sub comes in and the chords come in. Weirdness that happened here. Where was that? Was that Ah, yeah, the grain delay, classic. I used this a lot on my first album as well. It's just brilliant for the pitch. You automate the pitch. Normally, it's linked to like an actual kind of. So, if you wanted to change pitch in the grain delay, use it to change pitch. It basically breaks it up into little samples and then stretches it that way by spacing them apart. Does it more like a delay, like a conventional? Well, it is a delay, but it's conventional. So obviously you got a 1/16 note, 2/16 note, like a whole beat. And so what I tend to do is I use the time and try and bring it as slow, like close to 0 as possible, and then turn the dry to wet up as I do it. But if you have a look at here, there's stuff going on. Yeah, it just kind of just turns to mush and sounds brilliant. Especially the spray. The spray sounds great. And yeah, the pitch is going down as the dry to wet goes up and the spray goes up. Yes, so in here I think we've just got some incidental effects. Ah, yes, this sound is one that I used a lot. So I think I originally made this kick, well, it's like sub drop in my track Mirrored Walls. It's like a 1-2-5 kind of glitch, newer-y, breakbeaty, garagey thing, with a lot of ambiances. And yeah, this is originally from a. I'll show you. Well, the name of the sample is there. So yes. So what? That's what it turned into. So it was actually a kick that had a pretty nice tone to it, and I think I stretched it, and then I put it into the sampler, and then I could put a pitch envelope on it. I used the oscillator to create some FM to give it some extra tone. There you go. Yeah, the sampler in Ableton is great. But if I find the original sample, it was in Organic House, I think it is called. There you go. Organic House, and it is 1-2-5 Kid 2. Just so you get an idea of what it originally sounded like. 1-2-5. Oh no, it's not drip. Yeah, it was just that kick drum there. Yeah, it's just the first one, which I then stretched because it's a fairly clean sounding kick. And then yeah, you just put it in with a pitch automation, pitch drop going down 2 octaves to the root note of G sharp. Have a look at that on there. Going further down, we have some impacts coming in, just like your typical Vengeance stuff. White noises, like uplifters. A riser here. Big old reverb kick. Nothing special there. I think like with the white noises, I would have just cut out the low end. Yeah. And the reverb kicks, I would just slap some delay on it, because I always find they end a bit abruptly. So, which you tend to not really notice, but I do. So yeah, that's the backing. So, in summary, the arpeggio comes in with little hints of percussion. Sub comes in to then, with the hi-hats, kind of give it rhythm, set it down, give it foundations. This kind of sets it in. Then the chords come in, which is kind of like the theme of the album. And then it resolves with this long G sharp.
Awaken.
Hear the other vocals coming in. Then I was like, well, how am I going to get to 174 now? So, because the original was at 174. So I, basically, if you're trying to transition smoothly between tempos, without doing a kind of pitch ramp, because I could have slowly built it up in pitch, but however, I know that when the album's done and mastered, I have to put it back into an Ableton project and kind of glue the pieces together and make sure it's synced for them to work. And if you've got like a tempo ramp like this, it's just going to get messy, and you're not going to... It's more hassle than than I could really want to deal with. So, long pad, swamp it out with reverb, jobs are good. And then I put an actual impact in just to signify a kind of change. It's like cinematic kind of trumpet noises and drones coming in. Go. And then obviously he needs to be like, "You Are Alone," all menacing just before it drops into the but yeah, I think the last things to do is to just go over these vocals, I think, and then like I said, we'll look at I Am in the next video, because otherwise this would be a very long video. One thing I noticed, just something else to glue them over, another one. We've got I think that's just a preset. Operator. Yeah, one harmonic bleep. Yeah. Don't know why I chose that, it just happened to work. So... yeah, just an arpeggio. What's that playing? Oh. It's just playing a G5 chord just over 2 octaves. Then it jumps up an octave. Then it jumps up an octave when... yeah, and it fades in, as you can see here, with the volume here on the... what's the volume coming from? The volume from that. From operator. It's being overdriven. Yeah, because he just has no harmonics without... doesn't have the filters all the way down, but even then it didn't really. And then I had to jump it up as well to meet the fact that it gone up an octave. So notes that go into distortion sound very different depending on what note you're playing. So yeah, and then an auto pan just make it interesting, and that kind of overflows into I Am. But yeah, like I was before I got sidetracked, we have the vocals. So we've got, what's this? Yes. So that was to go kind of. I liked what I was doing with the percussion, with those like 808 sounds that are like here, and then those like white noise MS-20 kicks. Do something similar here as well. And I thought, well, the vocal was pretty robotic. Good way to tease that in. So I think it's just one of the syllables for. I think it's just the I from I am. Just cut up and looped. Simple as that. There's a grain delay. What's that doing? Okay, that's probably doing. So all these effects will come into play later on in I am, because those vocals appear in the drop as well. So I think I would have done this first, and then, because knowing I've already done the work here with the processing, I would be like, okay, I'll do it on this channel, and it's another thing to make it coherent across the 2 tracks. As opposed to if you're doing it in 2 different projects, it just gets messy and it's never really going to sound exactly the same. But yeah, so we've got some vocals here. So these are actually the original recording, showing browser, from the first album.
When I close my eyes, I feel nothing.
Yep. But I wanted to kind of degrade it a bit. So I boosted the volume, narrowed it, put grain delay on.
When I close my eyes.
Let's turn stuff off and see how things sound as it evolves. So I'll leave that on. So we've got the...
When I close my eyes, I feel nothing.
So we've got... So it was recorded on my field recorder, which is a stereo microphone. So there's a chance, like, when I recorded it, she might have been sitting more to the left or right of me. So then I just kind of wanted to monoize it a bit and kind of remove the room a bit, and then
When I close,
boost the level as well. Now I've got the grain delay. That is not doing anything, but it's doing something later on, which I don't know is what it's doing.
when I close my eyes, I feel nothing. But once blind from the world, I can see once again.
So I think I am actually using it as a delay, mainly probably for the spray function.
When I close my eyes, I feel nothing. But once blind from the world, I can see once again.
Let's reset that back to normal.
When I close,
Now I've got Camel Fat, which is doing a sample.
my eyes, I feel nothing.
Yes, so it's doing a bandpass here. It's effectively a bandpass. I'm cutting out a lot of the highs, some of the highs, cutting out a lot of the lows and leaving a little band here. Got a flanger.
When I close,
So if I turn stuff off.
when I close my eyes,
So firstly, I isolated the frequency point,
when I close my eyes,
put some effects on just to add a bit more interest,
when I close my eyes, I feel.
and then distorted it, because the distortion would work really well. I'm not sure about what the chain is on Camel Fat, where it starts. Oh, obviously, I haven't got any internet apparently, but it's okay because I'm recording this offline. I hope it's recording. So,
When I close my eyes, I feel.
yeah. So I'm not sure where the chain's going, but yeah, bandpass filter, isolate section, flanger to make it a bit more interesting, and distortion, because stuff like flangers and choruses work really well going into distortion. So you can create some mental stuff. Some phaser to make it a bit more spacey.
When I close my eyes, when I close my.
Yep. Bit reduction, like bit crushing it.
When I close my eyes, I feel nothing.
And you can really hear the poles and the notches of the phaser moving up and down when the redux is on. Bit crushing, it's really good. Chorus, which is just evolving as it goes on.
Once blind from the world, I can see once again.
And then stereo expander.
But once blind from the world, I can see once again.
Yeah, so that really comes into play when emphasizes the chorus. When the chorus comes up, it kind of increases the stereo width. That's what I use it for a lot of the time. Yes, so next we have the vocals here. So we've got a group here. So what I would have done is I would have recorded individual phrases and sentences, just because it can't really. The software I was using, it obviously isn't human. so it doesn't really know how to make pauses, and then I would have compiled them together and kind of worked out a way for them to work. So
Awaken. It has been a long time since you last opened your eyes.
and sometimes it does, like, you end up having to rewrite stuff as well, so because it'll say things really weird. So you'll be like, okay, there's certain words it's not going to use. And below there's the classic kind of reversed reverby kind of effect. Originally these vocals were at 174. There was no pitch change. So over here, if you have a look here, it's at 125. Then the pitch jumps up to here to 174. So it actually knocked this out of sync when I put it in, because I don't think I had warp on. Oh no, it's still stretched at 174, but the warp is off on these. I wasn't going to stretch. You don't need to time stretch these vocals because they're not rhythmic. But with these reverbs, you kind of had to. But it created a cool kind of effect when it was a bit out of sync. So if you listen to them together,
Awaken.
so it adds some kind of delay.
It has been a long time since you last opened your eyes.
So it makes it really kind of unnatural and like all computer speaking in your head or something like.
You once said that when blind, you could see once again.
So yeah, that was one of those kind of happy little accidents. I dropped it in, and yeah, and it just happened to work. I just liked how it sounded. And then obviously when it gets to this bar here, it snaps back in time.
Look at it. Feel it. You feel it, don't you?
So yeah, for people that don't know, what I would have done to create that effect, if I just make a new channel, is it's a classic effect. I've got a vocal here.
Awaken.
I would have reversed it. Slap some reverb on it.
Hear what? Hear what?
Sounds like I put some delay on there. Let's put ping pong delay before the reverb. Make it sound interesting. A bit more interesting.
Hear what?
Maybe a bit of shorter feedback. Sorry, it doesn't last very long.
Hear what?
And then you freeze it or flatten it or record it into another channel. Flatten. Bring it out. Verse it back round. Get the timing back up. Back to where it was. And then if I play it.
Awaken.
There you go. Job's a good one. Sounds great. It's good for like vocals coming in. Even just if I don't actually keep the word, you just that kind of tail that it generates at the start, the kind of swoosh in. If you just cut that out, that's good for like transitions, because it's like instead of like white noise rises, because it's like especially with like a vocal tune, it's a familiar kind of vocal tone that comes in. Yes. So in terms of processing on these vocals, we've got a group with just these two on. That is not doing anything. So because I think it's from that older project, and I would have brought it in, it probably would have been processed in that. But I probably would have, when I did the reverse flip, I would have made sure there's not so much low end in the reverb, and maybe done a bit of EQ and then flattened it, flipped it back round and brought it back in. So yeah, let's turn these off. So
Look at it.
yeah, it sounds very digital. You can hear like where they've sliced together all the phonics and the graphemes and stuff, and all the sounds. So I've got ping pong
Look at it. Feel. Look at it.
and a bit of EQ. I've got a de-esser on here to get rid of those like harsh S's.
You tried to change what is not yours to change. You tried to change what is not yours to change.
Yeah, so the S is really in there. Compressed it.
You tried to change what is not yours to change.
Bit reduction.
You tried to change what is not yours to change.
Filter
You
delay.
tried to change what is not yours to change. You are alone.
And then EQ just to roll up.
You
the line.
are alone.
Then this one here is just pitched down a fifth. So 5 semitones, So it is essentially turning it into a 5 chord. So it's gone down 5. So say it was C, it would be, well, let's keep it in key. Say it was G sharp. It's been pitched down to a D sharp, which is a fifth above the G below it. So it's creating a G sharp 5 chord. If it was playing G sharp, obviously it's vocal. It doesn't really have a pitch, it's not playing a note, but obviously it still has a pitch to it, and it creates this chord. So it's like a G5. It's like a 5 chord inverted.
You are alone.
And just some chorus on there, just to really widen it. And that is, I believe that is it. So, what's this little fairly noises? Yeah, so this bit, we've got some cinematic sounds just before we go in. So we've got these horns, which are just fun. They're just sample packs, been repitched. A drone. I would have just quickly thrown these in. And some other bits. And maybe played around and reversed them, repitched them, fairly basic stuff. Drenched them in reverb. I do like to put a lot of reverb on stuff. And yeah, that would have been that, I suppose. And it just stayed. If it works, it works. Don't be too afraid to rinse sample packs. Because in the context of the tune, when everything's playing together, it might not be so recognisable. If someone recognises it, doesn't matter. If it works, it works. Weird techno sound with lots of. I'll go into this more detail because there's a lot of these. There's a whole group for like weird techno-y sounds. I'll go through that in I Am. But that was a lot of fun. And yes, apart from that, what is this? That is a. Ooh, okay, yep. Riser going in. So like I tried to put all the risers in going before the drop. Well, I say the transition into I Am, where comes in for track 2. I'll go into more detail in the next video about those. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you look forward to listening to going through all the other tracks. I'm certainly going to look forward to going back. This is probably the first time I've opened this project since I finished the album, more or less. I've got no reason to go back now, unless I want to do a VIP. And yeah, let me know which track you're looking forward, what you think about this one. If you got any questions about anything, drop them below, drop a comment somewhere where you see this video. On Facebook or YouTube, and yeah, I'll try to answer them in the next video in a reply to you. And yeah, let me know what tracks you're looking forward to seeing. Like I said, I'm going to look forward to going through this and reminiscing through all of it. And hey, maybe I'll learn some things that I've relearned, some things I've forgotten, and or maybe be like, why the hell did I do that? But yeah. That's me. That's me out. I'm Christian, otherwise known as Toronto's Broken. And yeah, stay tuned for the next one where we go through I Am. And I hope you enjoyed it and find it informative.